Hello, welcome everyone. This is Steve Anderson from the product management team for SMAX. Today we are doing the Release Readiness webinar for our August release, 2021.08. Thank you for taking the time to attend or to watch this recording if you're watching it after the fact. So we are talking about a release here that is not yet available. We're still in the final stages of getting it ready for release. So it is possible that something could change in what I'm presenting between now and when the release goes out. So it is somewhat roadmap information, and we may touch on roadmap topics here and there. So please consider that roadmaps can and do change, and check the final release notes for the final information on the release. And then this is confidential information. Please treat it as such. All right, very simple agenda for today. A couple housekeeping slides, then we'll get into the content. I have slides. I hope to do some live demo as well. And then if we have time, I'll open it up for Q&A. Throughout the session, feel free to submit any questions or comments you have into the question panel. I will try to keep an eye on that and respond to them during the appropriate section. Otherwise, we can try to cover them in the open Q&A section at the end. Slide 4 notes here with the short URLs to the calendar of topics for the user group and registration for the user group here. You all are in attendance to this or watching the recording, so you probably have these, but if you need to share this information with a colleague, this is a good slide to use. And then just a little bit about these release readiness webinars. If you weren't expecting this session and you're just coming here for a typical user group, we run these release readiness webinars ahead of each of our releases to help give you a little bit of advanced information on what is coming in the release, so you can start your planning process a couple weeks ahead of the release being available, release notes being available. So hopefully you will find the information helpful in your planning and preparation for updating to the new release. And let's get into the content. So here we have our slide showing a couple highlights for each of our quarterly releases going back to the first SMAX release of 2017-11. This may be the last time I'm able to fit a new release onto this slide, so I'm probably will be looking for a new format for this. So I've grouped the major highlight features into 4 areas. So service portal, asset management, service management, and mobile. And we have a few things that don't fit into these categories, but let's just go into the details. We're going to start with the service portal UI update. And this is a large release for the portal. We've done quite a bit of work on the user interface layer of the portal. Quite a few changes in the user experience. This has been primarily focused on the front end, so the user interface, and not on the back end functionality. I do have a slide a little bit later with some functional changes that are included as well, but really the focus of the effort was on refreshing the UI and making improvements that we could by changing layout, moving things around, and those kind of visual changes that didn't impact the back end code and capabilities. That's where we focused. And this work has been underway for a little while. So it's a accumulation of a lot of work from the R&D team. One note on this slide here, anywhere in the presentation where the changes are tied to an idea submitted on Idea Exchange, I put the little idea icon here in the upper right-hand corner. And I'm going to try to demo and talk to this at the same time. We'll see how that works. So first, I want to make sure that I am still logged in. It looks like I am. And then I'm going to put the portal over here. And I'm going to put my slide here. All right. We'll see if this works so I can show you the text and demo the product. All right. So starting, and this UI refresh for the portal does apply both to the SMAX portal, which is what I will be focused on in my content here, and on the SMASM, also known as mixed mode portal. That was covered in the SMASM Release Readiness webinar that has already happened. The recording is available, and Ming covered the changes, these changes as they apply to mixed mode in that webinar. So if you're interested in the SMASM side, I encourage you to watch the recording if you didn't catch that webinar live. All right. So going into the landing page changes, so here's the portal landing page. One thing you'll notice is that we've improved the readability when you are have both an image on your category tile and text. What we heard from customers was it was almost impossible to find an image that would allow you to have readable text because of changes in brightness, etc. So we've added this shaded area and made the text bold. So hopefully you'll have an easier time making your text readable if you would like to use an image. And I've seen a number of portals that went kind of to this approach of these down here at the bottom without the nice looking image on the category tile, just to make sure that the text would be readable. So hopefully we've improved that and you'll have an easier time configuring there. And then we had some links up here on the upper right hand side, and these were redundant. There were other ways to access that information. So we've kind of cleaned that up, tried to make it a little bit more streamlined and remove some redundancy in the portal. Advance the slide here. All right. My next page is around just some general changes. So in the menu structure, so now we've moved all of the links to interact with the content of the portal for the end user are moved here onto the into the hamburger menu on the left side. So we see if I want to go to my requests, if I want to go to approvals, questions, all that, or go over to the agent interface, it's always going to be on the left side here. And then on the right side, these are things that are related to you personally. So your preferences and skills and logging out. So if you're doing something related to yourself, it's under your profile picture. If you're doing something related to the portal, then you would come here to the hamburger. The main content and the side panels now scroll independently. I don't have enough categories to show that unless interesting. I can probably show that in a later section, but so this panel, the main panel and the side panel are now independent and will scroll independently so that your side information doesn't scroll off the screen just because you have a long request list, for example. The category and search results now show simpler buttons and badges. So let's go ahead and do a search. So we'll do email on mobile, favorite search. So you'll see here we have the news article, those badges are there, and we just say read or request on the others. And you can see here that I'm able to scroll this panel without the side panel moving. And if this one was scrollable, I would be able to scroll that as well. And the offering page has been redesigned. Let's go into, sure, we'll request this one. So on the offering page, you can see we've now standardized on this new header style with the background and redesigned this. So some changes here on the top to hopefully make it a little bit easier for end users to read this information and able to fit more information on the page. When I have here noted in the deck, but not set up to show you, is that we've made some changes to the to-do cards for the survey type. So when you have a survey to respond to, we include the request ID, whereas previously we were just showing the survey ID, which wasn't as meaningful to users. So responding to some end user feedback there. If we go to the request list, so one thing if you're familiar with the portal, you should notice that we have expanded the workflow widget. We've added this filtering capability, so you can filter by date, you can filter by phase in your request list if you want to. You can sort, and then we show the creation date here, and if I hover over, it's going to give me the full date and a reminder on what field this is. Did I cover? Oh yeah, and we've added the badge for each of the request types, so you can quickly see whether you've the request you submitted is a service request or support request. If I drill into one of these, we'll go to the request detail page, and again, you can see the new header style with the expanded workflow. And then we've grouped any actions here at the top. So accept, reject, mark as solve, chat are all grouped up here in the upper right-hand corner. And you're seeing a little preview of another improvement here. I'll talk about it in a couple minutes. And then we've redesigned the layout. So we have collapsible sections here to make it easier to get to the information you want to see. Collapse those. And then I think the biggest change is we've moved to this style of label over the content of the field value. And this is really useful if you're, especially on user options, if you're using long option names to give people instructions or you're using field help. This layout is much better in displaying that to the end users and letting them read that information in a natural way. I don't have any super long ones in this example. All right. And okay, so moving on to some other improvements, kind of functional side improvements. I'm going to go to full screen for this part because I need all the screen real estate. We'll go back to the service portal main page. So we've moved where theme settings are set up. So you can see here under my hamburger menu, there's a theme setting option. This replaces the theme setting page that was in the agent side. So now when you want to modify your theme, you come to the portal itself and you're going to do it in the context of the portal. So I'm going to, but the access to this option is still controlled the same way it was. So it's just the location of it has moved. The controls around who is able to see this option and do theme settings is not changed with this release. So when I click on that, it's going to bring up my theme settings panel, and you'll see that I'm in preview mode. And everything I do to change my theme is immediately reflected in the portal. And I can still navigate in here. I can go to my requests, move this over here, and then I can go back. So it's very interactive. And I'm going to go ahead and switch to a theme I created for Release Readiness. It's really just a copy of one of the existing themes, but so you can see that it immediately reflects as I navigate through. If I want to see how my theme looks on any page in the portal, all I have to do is navigate around just as I naturally would. So much improved over how we were handling this before. And then that brings me to the next new feature, which is here on the global page settings, we've added the ability to configure the size of the category tiles. So we have three options: small, medium, and large. Large is what the only option was before. So what you have today is large, but if I would like to see what it would look like with medium tile sizes or small tile sizes, I can just set it like that. and kind of like the medium. And if I go ahead and then set this one as the default, and then I can save and exit, I should have this as my new theme. So I see a question has come in. Does it mean that there is no service portal settings on the agent interface to define the service portal theme? So there are still service portal settings, but the page, the initial landing page, used to be the theme settings, and that page just, we changed the default page that you go to, and the theme setting page is still there with a note and a redirect to the portal, the theme settings on the portal, just to help people who maybe did not watch the webinar or forget what I have said here at some point later. I can actually even just go over here and show that. So if we go to service portal settings, still there, because there are still quite a few settings relevant on the service portal. And I'll actually need this in a second anyway. So it's natural for me to come here. So you'll see we now start on the feature settings. And if I click to theme settings, there's just a note here for backwards compatibility to note that the page has been moved. All right, coming back here to the service portal, if I come back into my requests, and actually maybe I will drop it down, I can show you my text. So here's the tile size configuration, and moving on to canceling service requests or abandoning service requests. So that was another idea that has been posted and requested, enhancement requests made to me through other means to allow end users to cancel their service requests. We currently have the mark is solved for support requests, but they wanted that, that option available on service requests as well, or a similar option. And we have enabled that now. So you can see if I go back into that request I showed you earlier, I have this cancel request option. And if I click on that, it moves to done. It's been moved to the abandon phase within the done meta phase. And we've done this with a flexible configuration that hopefully will allow some of you to find other uses for it. So if we come here to feature settings, and if I go to configuration settings, we have this custom action area, and let's go into edit. So what you can do with this new configuration is expose a manual transition in your request workflow in the portal. So I've chosen to expose the log to abandon and name it cancel request. You could name it abandon request or whatever name you think the option should have in the portal. You can configure it there. You could configure a new manual transition, maybe to a phase where somebody would take a look and ensure that the fulfillment has been properly halted, and then manually move it to abandoned after that, if you would like. So lots of flexibility. Other use cases can be satisfied with this because we built it in a more flexible way rather than just exposing an option that we fully control. So it's up to you how you want to utilize this. All right. Let's clear some of this out of the way. Are there any other questions? I see there are some questions. Are there any that I should respond to live, or have you answered them?
We answered, yes.
All right, great. One other note that I forgot to show this in the demo part, but on the cancel service requests or the custom actions, those appear in the to-do action list as well. So from the action list, you can cancel the request there or from the detail page on the request. All right, moving on to the next feature, we have retroactive change. So while the best practice is to always plan your changes ahead of time, enter a request for change record into SMAX, we know that that is not always how these things happen in the real world. And the SMAX workflow, out-of-box SMAX workflow, change workflows, have really kind of enforced that a change hasn't happened yet, and you are documenting a request for change that you will implement at a later time. And I wanted to make a change here to have better support for recording a change that you've already done after it has happened in the system to ensure that you have a full record of the changes in your environment in the change management module. And there are a couple main ways that I've talked to customers about how this happens. So probably the most common one that I hear about is emergency incident resolution, where you have an incident, you want to restore service as quickly as possible. Maybe you get verbal approval or email approval that you can make the change in the environment, and you don't take the time to log the change ahead of making the change in your environment. So you make the fix, but we want you to go back and record what you did so that we have a record of it, and we can relate it to the incident. If an issue happens because of that, we can link the new issue that comes in to that change as well. Much better for tracking. Another scenario I've heard about is when requests are made, kind of ad hoc requests are made to a domain expert, email, phone, walk up in person and say, hey, can you do this for me? And it's a very quick change for the person to do, and they want to be responsive to their customer in this case, so they make the change, and we want to enable them to go back and document that so we have that full record. So that's what we're talking about there. So we've made changes to the workflows so that you can work the change process as it is today for non-retroactive changes. But if you identify a change as a retroactive change, then we're going to follow some different rules. So we no longer require the schedule start and end to be in the future. That's one of the main ones. But we also expose a retroactive justification field for you to fill in the actual start and actual end as you're creating the change. And then we allow you to skip directly from the evaluate phase to the review phase. You've already done the change. Those middle phases are not relevant in this case because you're recording it after it has happened. And then we've added a couple example out-of-box reports to show you the change creation of it over time and the change ratio by month. And if I drag this over here, we can, maybe I should make this a little bit bigger. We'll go into change. If I do a new change, you'll see there's this new retroactive value here. I can click on that, and then it's going to expose these additional fields. And I can go ahead and say that I did it yesterday at midnight. And then let me go ahead and apply a template here just to fill in some fields a little quicker. Retro change release readiness. And I think I've got my required fields and 2 more. Change model, yes. We'll just select that one, and then we'll go ahead and save. And then you'll see that we can go here directly to the review and save it. And now I can fill in my review results. Worked, and then I can close it. And now I've, completion code. And now I have a more complete documentation of what has happened in my environment in the change module. Let's move that out of the way and continue on. I don't see any new questions, so I will continue. All right, knowledge search of Confluence content. So Atlassian Confluence, the wiki tool. So today we've supported external indexing SharePoint content, external SharePoint content for knowledge management purposes. And we're adding the ability to do that for Confluence as well. And you can kind of see the flow here in the screenshots on the right. So here, this example is in a global search. So if I'm searching in global search or in live support, and we have indexed external content in Confluence, we'll see external knowledge shown here. And then you can click on the view button. An agent can click on the view button and they will go to that content. Now, if it is, if they're not already logged in and able to access that, they will have to go through a login page. So we don't give them access to anything that they don't already have access to in some way. So they will have to log into Confluence or SharePoint. Same behavior there currently as well. And then they can view that external content. So this is really helpful for those cases where you have some content that is managed by a team that is not going to move their knowledge process into the SMAX knowledge management module. So maybe they have their own process, external, owned by another team that manages that content, but we still want to expose that to the agents in SMAX as useful information so that if they're in live support, they can see that as potentially helpful, or if they do a global search, they can find that knowledge and hopefully help them complete the task that they're working on. You can have multiple sources of external knowledge for a single SMAX tenant. So you could have multiple Confluence servers or spaces and multiple SharePoint sites. All of that can be configured. And then the note at the bottom is just a reminder that external knowledge is currently only visible to agents. It's not accessible to end users through the portal. That is something we're looking at on the roadmap. I try to avoid roadmap comments in this, but that's one that's come up frequently enough. I wanted to just remind you about the current behavior and have the follow-up comment on it. All right, moving on to the category of asset management. So first on Asset Manager to Asset Management X or AMX migration. So we are working on migration documentation and sample connected scenarios to help you migrate from Asset Manager to AMX, focused very similar to the approach we've had with Service Manager evolution to SMAX, focused on that foundational data. In this case, it's things like contract vendors, catalog. Not going to go into it in great detail here. Check the documentation when the release is available for additional information there. In the area of software asset management, we've made some improvements to the products area to allow you to identify which products you are managing. So when you run discovery on your environment, we're going to bring in all of the software titles that you have in your environment into the products list. And that could be thousands of products. And you may only be doing software asset management on a subset of those. And what we wanted to do was to give you the ability to identify to the system which ones you are managing and give you filtering capabilities so that you only see the ones that are relevant to you. And then we wanted to filter by default the compliance reports, so they're only trying to show you the information that is most relevant to you. So let me go ahead and bring the demo over here again, and we'll go to software asset. I'm going to go to products. So you can see we now have the filtering option here. So if I wanted to see what is not managed, I can do that. I can remove that entirely as well if I want to. And we have the preview page over here, which is new as well on this list. So if I wanted to go ahead and say that I'm going to manage, sorry, not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do it over here. So if I want to manage After Effects, I can go ahead and do that straight from the preview here. So just a little bit of a change there. Move that out of the way. A couple other changes to note here in software asset management. So we made some changes to support operating system environment-based licensing. So simple products that are licensed by OSE. The rules typically are that you need to license, you need to have licenses for those operating system environments, whether they're physical or virtual. And previously, we kind of roll them up under the physical host, so you can see the total number of licenses that are used on that physical host. But with this change, we actually break it out. So we license all the OSEs, whether they're physical or virtual, and we present it at the OSE level in the compliance reporting. So it gives you just a better, cleaner view on how you're doing your licensing there. And then we're adding some support for virtual clusters. And there's a couple new checkbox on that products page that control how the license calculations are done for the cluster setup. So there's a support cluster option that you can check and a virtual machine live migration option. If you select the virtual machine live migration, then the rules typically are that all of the hosts within that cluster must be licensed, because it could be, the software could be moved to any of them. And so that's how we will calculate your license usage in that scenario if you select that option. And this is kind of primarily targeted at Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle database, but if these rules can be applied to any product if you have one that follows that model. All right. And we are on to mobile. Dean, did you want to cover this?
Hey, Steve. Yep, absolutely. I'm happy to cover mobile. So as you can see, we are now treating Agent Mobile for iOS as GA. So we've completed some additional work on Agent Mobile. We've added support for additional field types within the view. So we now support view and edit of duration fields. And so that you can add in as many days or minutes, hours as you like. We've also added the ability to view the one-to-many or the many-to-many grid on the forms. They're not editable, or obviously though you'd also have the related records as well, but we are now making them so they are visible. And then probably my most favorite feature of this release is our new My Views feature. Which for those who are unaware, our design partner session that we ran on June the 10th with our customers got to choose the icon that we have used for My Views. And you can see it's what we officially call the fancy eye icon there. And I'm very happy that they chose that, because that was also the choice that I wanted. So that was really lucky that they went with that choice. So to give you an idea of how My Views work, I think we've got a little video to run, if I'm correct, Steve. So we click next and that should start to run. Hopefully that will start up. Yep, there we go. I'm not seeing it running. We might need
Now
to.
it's going.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So from the icon at the start, we have obviously the My Views icon. From there, you can add views, and it will look against any views on request or task that you have in the system aligned to you within the agent interface. You can then add them to the mobile app. So add them into your, should we say, your views, My Views. Choose the ones that you want, and then at that point, you can then view them whenever you wanted to. And you've got the ability to jump between different views that you've got set up. And obviously not have to anything that you got that based on the filtering that you've set up on the agent interface. Has it paused again, Steve? I'm seems to have hung on my side. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. So the video is running, obviously showing adding a mixture of request and task views into My Views. You can set a maximum of 7 so that you have them in there. Obviously, you can then change the order that they appear. So there's a left-right scroll between them once you've selected them. So we'll move the all tasks view to the top as an example, I think, and then we'll drop one of those out. Maybe add an extra one in just for the fun of it, or not. And then you've got your views, and you've got all them that you can slide between, and then obviously drill down. Likewise, there is some basic filtering that you can do on the views based on the phase, but you've got that all available to you now. So you get any of your views for requests and tasks you can now utilize on the mobile, which I think is fantastic. Moving on, we're now obviously switching the majority of our development to Android to move towards getting that now to the same level as iOS. We've done obviously some more work with this release. So we've now added in the global search, which allows you to search for nearly all the record types. We've also added in the rich text editor, which allows you within the rich text editor to embed an image or embed an attachment. Obviously, it's not standard attachments, it's only within the rich text field. You also got the ability to scan a QR or a barcode, and it will put the link to it in as part of that. There's some basic text formatting, supports hyperlinks, and it also supports the CI detection. So if you list something in there that's obviously for a CI, that will automatically get added as a related record. And of course, with the search, we've also included the barcode QR scan as part of the search as well. What that also means is it's also backwards compatible to the SMAX 2021.08 release. So for those of you who have been on these previously, you may remember in that particular release of SMAX, we added in some new forms into Studio for the different record types so that they were visible on mobile. So as long as you have that version, the Agent Mobile will work with that. Yep. Okay. I think there's one more slide. Do you want to move forward? Okay, and then another feature that we've added, and this is across for end users as well as agent users of mobile, and is available for both iOS and Android. We've added a new debug mode into the app. So this is basically a way to help with if there are users that report issues with using the mobile app, whether that's a crash or something else. We've now added this new debug setting. There are obviously a number of security and privacy controls in place around this for enabling it. So the first thing that's most important is you need to enable that at a tenant level first. So within the application settings of the tenant, there is now a new switch to enable the debug mode on the mobile. Once that is on, it still doesn't enable the debug mode on an individual mobile app. The user themselves has to go to either the account section on iOS, which is what's showing on there, or from the menu drop down for Android that we currently have. There'll be a debug settings option, and then within that, as you can see in the middle screenshot, you'll see the ability to turn the debug mode on or off. You'll also see the ability to clear the log cache as well as that, and also the option to send the logs. So with the way that this is set up is that in theory, if someone is having some issues, they can turn the debug mode on, or maybe they decide to have it on for a little bit longer or set it on earlier, that's fine. Then after, they can send those logs to an administrator, and basically that log cache, which is within the mobile, it's only within the app itself, can be sent out to someone else. So you can send that to your administrator, or if you wanted to, you can send it to yourself if you want to validate the content that's in there. So a couple of things to really note around that is we only record logs for a maximum of 12 hours. And if you turn off the debug mode, it will disable the logs. Obviously, you just then need to clear the log cache. No additional permissions are needed on the mobile device either. This is all, should we say, the data, the cache data that's within the app itself. So there's nothing extra that's needed in any additional settings. And of course, whilst we, with the way those logs are created, from a, should we say, where we look at it from a privacy perspective, there may be some personal identifiable information, so PII data is referred to in GDPR and some of the California privacy laws, that may be collected, but with obviously the ability, you as the user have the ability to decide if you want to send that those logs to your administrator. Obviously it's there to help, but obviously you have the ability to view those logs yourself because it's just generating text files. Okay, and that's debug mode and log collection.
Great, thank you. All right, now I have a few additional improvements I want to talk about. So the first is around the Teams integration. So this is just building on a little bit of refinement around the agent collaboration use case that we introduced in 2021.05 and was demoed in that release readiness. For the sake of time, I'm not planning to go into this in detail. So hopefully you, or I'm assuming that you already know the use case that we're covering. If not, go back and watch that release readiness, please. So in the May release, we had 5 pre-named channels that you could use for the Teams integration. And that was kind of an interim step, and we've now continued to build that out. So we no longer have predefined channels. You now can, when you want to configure an integration to Teams, you can create a new channel and give it a meaningful name. And that's the name that will appear in the business role when you're deciding when to initiate the integration from within Studio. And so you get to pick the name that's meaningful, and you're no longer limited to 5 channels. You can define any number of channels to support your Teams integration scenarios. Then we have an improvement around displaying the name of the user that makes a comment on Teams. So there's a new option that you can enable if you would like that to have the Teams username and the timestamp included when a comment is posted from Teams into the SMAX comment area. So this is optional, both so we allow you to not change the behavior if you're already using the integration, but also if you decide that you do not want to collect Teams usernames and add them into SMAX for whatever reason, you can leave this option disabled. And then we've added a kind of communication improvement to support a scenario where you have SMAX deployed on an internal network and Teams is out there in the public internet. So you can now configure an external fully qualified domain name and expose that to support the Teams integration. And full details will be in the documentation on how to set that up. And now we have an improvement around users personalizing their view of many-to-many grids in many locations in forms in the tool. So you've had the ability to configure the columns on many-to-many grids. However, that information was not persisted anywhere. So if you go to if you're on a record and there's a many-to-many grid and you add a bunch of columns and you rearrange them so you're getting the information you want, the next time you go back there, you'd have to do it all again. Frustrating, not very efficient. So now we're persisting that information. So when you modify the columns, you are able to see the system will retain that modification. The next time you log in, you'll see your modified set of columns. So a little improvement there for the users, and that is per user stored. And then we've found that there have been a number of cases where customers have deleted custom fields that they have created. Maybe they decided they didn't need it anymore, or for whatever reason. And if all you do is delete the field and you have references in forms or in business rules, that can present a warning when you go to update to the new version. So you'll get a warning, you'll have to go in and clean that up before the update will proceed. We want to avoid that to make sure the update process is seamless. So we've moved the validation, we put the validation on the action of deleting the custom field. So when you delete a custom field, we're going to run a check. We're going to see if that's referenced anywhere. We're going to warn you if it is. You'll need to make the appropriate changes, remove references to that field before the system will allow you to delete it. And then just a change specific to EKS. We found a way to simplify the network architecture, removing a layer. So going forward, we'll be using the AWS load balancer controller, and that will allow us to remove the need for a network load balancer, remove one layer in our network architecture, so save some costs and make it a little bit more efficient. New installations automatically use the new deployment structure, but if you are on EKS, there will be some steps for you in the documentation when you do update to this release. So just be aware of that and look for it. All right, and then for Postgres, we're adding support for version 12 and dropping support for 9.6, just maintaining our compatibility with the evolution of Postgres. And with that, just a slide here showing you all of the release readiness webinars and links to those if you want, I think this may be the last one. So the other ones are recorded and the recordings will be posted if you're interested in either the Service Manager Release Readiness webinar or HCMX. Those are available if you did not catch them live. And back to Dean for SMAXTEMBER.
Thank you, Steve. So yes, SMAXTEMBER is coming. You heard that right. We have decided to rename the 9th month of the year officially. I'm currently in the process of sending notifications to all the governments around the world to get this officially named appropriately. So what is SMAXTEMBER? Well, SMAXTEMBER is going to be a month-long festival to showcase SMAX through a series of bite-sized activities, webinars, live Q&A sessions, competitions, and the idea is to involve absolutely everyone. So we want Micro Focus people obviously to be there, we want our partners to be there, we want you, our customers, and we're also going to have some potential new customers that are going to be part of that as well. And really it's to try and sort of come together and basically do some amazing work around how we do configurations in SMAX, aligned with maybe where you want to extend service management into non-IT areas, or building out SMAX Studio apps. And for those of you who may remember, last year we ran the SMAX App Challenge. This is, should we say, this year's version. We're going bigger and we're going better. Next slide, please, Steve. So what's happening then? So we're going to, on the first of SMAXTEMBER, we're going to have an opening keynote session where we're going to have a number of people talking about our overall plans for the event. Then during the event, we're going to have a number of enablement webinars, including a special build along SMAX app series where we'll be building an app live and showcasing all the various different steps and tips and tricks about doing that. We'll also be doing a number of, should we say, live support to drop-in Q&A sessions. So similar to the SMAX user group office hours, but a little bit more condensed, targeted for different regions. So we'll be running them at different times during the day on different days during the month of SMAXTEMBER. And then we've also got some of our partners are going to have some special webinars as well, where they'll be showcasing some of the things they've done with customers as well. And then, of course, our main SMAX challenge. So during the month of SMAXTEMBER, we're looking for you to get involved and compete in one of the following categories. You can compete in all three if you want to. That's not a problem at all. But we got the categories that we've set up are the design and build a new SMAX Studio app. So maybe you've got an idea for a studio app. Maybe it's aligned to something you do within the business. Maybe, I don't know, something for facilities management or HR, or maybe another part of your business, like the way you deliver products within your organization. Or maybe something completely different. You know, maybe you want to build an app for tracking how teams are going to work in the NFL when that starts up in the month of SMAXTEMBER. Maybe that's an option to look at. But there's that category of the SMAX Studio apps. Then we've got improve an existing SMAX Studio app. So maybe if your skill set isn't quite as good, or you're not quite sure on what would be an idea to do, we already have a number of apps available to download from the item marketplace. I think there's 21 apps, I believe, today. They're available where they've been developed and had some configuration done there. And some of them are on, should we say, a version 2 or version 3, but there's still some in there which are still, should we say, fresh. And the opportunity really is to take one of those apps and move it to the next level. And a good example of that is that a number of those apps, when they were created, were before we added the ability to include catalog content as part of package management. So should we say, for those that maybe want to have a little go and start to understand, there's some good examples with those apps where in the documentation, it talks about building out catalog content. If I take the example of visitor registration, there's a couple of offerings that it recommends to build out to help generate new visitors, creating records for visitors coming to a site. So you could build those out and then repackage that and maybe do a couple of other improvements as well, maybe setting up notifications or roles associated with the app. So we got that as our second category. And then that leads on into the third category as well, which is about building and designing catalog offerings. So we want you to give the ability to build out new catalog offerings, maybe aligned to different types of things you do within the business, and be able to showcase your skills and what you've done there. And that could be building out new things or something you've done within the organization you're quite proud of. Share that with us, and we're keen to see how that goes. And maybe you might win an award or two for that. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got a couple of other things that we're planning as part of the event. I always like to talk about the SMAXTEMBER GOAT, but I'm not going to mention more about that than just that. So if you want to go on to the next slide, Steve, I think it's the, yep. So save the date. It shouldn't be too difficult. There's only 1 month of the year that's called SMAXTEMBER, right? We'll be launching on the 1st with that, but registrations will be open soon. We're going to have a special registration page, just like things like Item Universe. In fact, because this is bigger than our Item Universe, we'll have a proper registration page, maybe even with a countdown timer to that opening keynote. But there's plenty of surprises that we've got planned during the event. And don't worry, if you can't attend during the month of SMAXTEMBER, maybe you can't, we're trying to do it in a bite-sized way. So everything that's produced, every kind of webinar that we do is recorded, is available to watch on demand, either within, should we say, the first few moments of, as quickly as possible, should we say, of it being done live. And look, we'll be following on and making sure we do things after the event as well. So, if you can't be part of it, not a problem, but we're keen to have you all involved with our plans. And that's it. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to do so. We can provide more details offline, whether you're, and if you want to be more heavily involved in some of the things that we're doing, maybe you want to do your own little webinar or talk about something that you've done. Absolutely delighted to hear from you, and we'll have you as part of that event. So look forward for more details. We'll also be sharing more details in our SMAX user groups as we go forward. So remember, SMAXTEMBER is coming. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Dean. And if any of you have vacation planned in September, there's still time to cancel those plans. All right. Q&A. I see a couple questions that haven't been responded to, so let me take a look at those. So, are there any plans to support any kind of websites, not only SharePoint or Confluence? So with this release, we will support SharePoint and Confluence only. But part of the behind the scenes work that was done as part of exposing the ability to index Confluence was ensuring that we can expose or add capabilities to index other content types in the future in a lower effort manner. So we have the infrastructure in place to be able to leverage other idle connectors to do this, which is the mechanism that we're using to do it. And if you are interested in other external content types, it would be great to get your input via Idea Exchange and see where you have other content that you would like to see indexed. Where is it stored? All right. And I think that's the only one. Are there any other questions that you would like that you see that I should be responding to? Other presenters? Rendusa?
Don't see anyone. I think you answered the one about external web, knowledge search, so I think we've got that one covered.
There is one more about the toolkit, the asset manager toolkit.
Yeah, so in terms of what it covers, I encourage you to check the release notes when they come out, and it'll cover what's being covered there, and that effort is ongoing. So if you have input on it, you can send that to us as well. And with that, we are right here at the end. So for internal and partners, we do have the follow-on internal continuation of this just after. So I encourage you to attend that. And with that, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to attend or to watch this recording. Really appreciate you taking the time. And talk to you again in a couple of weeks, I hope.